Hey everybody, C-Note here, and welcome to Dopamine, the show that is like your mother. Frightening, but gets nicer with age. I don't know. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about sex and depression. Speaking of your mother, this is not a good start. Today, yeah. So I wanted to talk about sex and depression because we're live in the Dopamine group. And this is a pretty big topic. This is something that I've had issues with in my past. Plenty of people have had issues with. On medication or not on medication, dealing with depression, dealing with social pressures from their spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, situations of all types, or boyfriend to boyfriend, whatever your situation may be. And I essentially wanted to kind of break this down as much as I can. Just generally talk about, the issues that I've faced in my past when it comes to sex while depressed, because sometimes you get a little bit of pressure from your partner, and you got to perform, right? So, this is going to be a weird one, but let's kick it off.
Drums, please.
Okay, so let me move the camera here. So for those of you who are new to the podcast and to the channel and all these things, I'm broadcasting live in our group. So it is Dopamine. It's called Dopamine Support for Mental Health, Mental Health Support for Creatives and Entrepreneurs. The short URL is dopamine.group. So if you join that group, please answer the questions. If you don't answer the questions, you're not going to get in. Because the most important thing about this group is making sure to cultivate a safe space for everybody. I want to make sure that everyone's having a good time, that everyone's doing okay, everyone can be open about what they're dealing with, and just a place for people to go to when they're having a rough time. So today is going to be one of those times, because for me, it actually makes it a little bit of a safer space for me to do these lives as well, because I know the people in the group. I've connected with them. They're more likely to ask questions, and I can answer questions for them. We can talk about some heavier topics. So with that, I wanted to talk about sex and depression. Now, sex has been something that is prevalent since the dawn of time, since the dawn of humanity. Everyone's banging each other every chance we get. But the problem is, much like mental health, there's a certain stigma that comes with sex, with expectations of each gender, of marriage, of relationships, things like that. And what comes with that is sometimes there are expectations, or whether it comes from the other person or from yourself, in terms of how you should perform, or how much you should perform, when you should be ready, when you should not be ready, how you should be taking care of yourself or not, certain things like that. So the core of what I want to talk about here is really dealing with the stigma and the difficulty of the pressure that comes with having a partner and someone who is obviously attracted to you, and they want to have sex with you, and they want to do things with you, but you're dealing with depression. You're not in the mood, for a lack of a better way to put it. Why am I not getting... Let me try a manual focus here. Sorry for the podcast listeners. This is not ideal, but that'll be better. Okay. I'm looking at the stream real quick, and I want to make sure that it actually looks good. So, I've had that plenty of times where it's a scenario where I'm not at all in the mood, but you get the pressure of being a dude first and foremost, and there's a lot of expectations of males being more, or should be, a little bit more ready to go at any time. And especially as a male dealing with mental health issues, it's just not always the case, you know? I'm also getting older, and it's not that things don't work. Things work. It's that sometimes you're just, you know, priorities change. Sometimes you're focused on your mental health, and sometimes you just don't feel good and you don't want to. You're too hot, you're uncomfortable, you're dealing with triggers, you're dealing with emotional stuff, you're dealing with stresses, and no one should be required or expected to perform in that way if you're not in it. Now, it's difficult too because, you know, sex is a pretty pertinent part of a relationship. It's kind of a big deal to make sure you're connecting with your partner and to make them feel like they're still appreciated and that you're attracted to them. That's like the difficult balance, right? You want to be able to say no respectfully, and say like, I'm just sorry, you know, be real about it, be honest, you know, say that I'm just not in a place where I'm able to give you my best, you know, or something like that. You know, it's something where like I'm dealing with mental health issues, or I'm feeling depressed, and you know, sometimes sex can make you feel a little bit better, but it's also, if you're not in it, you're just like, you're pushing, and it's really sucks to have sex with someone while you're depressed and not feeling it, because you don't feel like you're in it, you don't feel like you're present, you don't feel like you're really showing the kind of affection that you want to show, and that can be incredibly frustrating. It's so difficult, and again, as a dude, you get a lot of stigma that comes with, you know, being a male, and it's just like, aren't dudes just always ready? It's a physiological response, right? Well, physiological responses come from healthy mental states. So I've definitely had situations where I've kind of pushed through, or seemingly have been forced, like really just like pushed herself on me, and it's not pleasant. It's not as pleasant as it sounds. There's a lot of dudes that are like, I would love that. I want her to like take me, and I want her to just like climb on, and I want everything to be great. I don't want to have to do anything. But it's not pleasant when you're just like laying there and you're depressed and you feel like a shell of a person. It's like you feel like you're being taken advantage of. You know, it doesn't feel like love at that point. You feel like you're like, this person is not trying to have sex with you. This person is trying to have sex. There's a difference. And when it's like a lack of respect for your depressed state, and the fact that you don't want to do this because you're trying to just make it to the next hour, you know, it's another aspect of feeling support from the person that you're with to respect you enough to, you know, to listen to where you're at and respect where you're at. And frankly, if they're able to support you and be there for you, that's way more attractive than someone who's trying to be forceful and difficult. So, how much time is it? We got good 8 minutes? Okay. I haven't thought this topic through, so I'm just kind of winging it. But for the most part, I've dealt with that situation. I think the male aspect of the stigma is frustrating. I'm not really sure how to break it down, other than just plainly saying that it's not always the case. You know, dudes aren't always in the mood. We're in the mood a lot, sure. We want to do it, and we want to do this thing. We want to get it in. We want to do the deed. We want to make it happen. But, you know, it's not a given. We're still humans. We're not just some sex robot. As much as you want us to be, it's not the way it works, you know. And again, it's just a matter of mutual respect. You know, men can be very forceful, and when a man is being too aggressive to a woman who is dealing with depression and just isn't in the mood, you know, you start to kind of leak into this guilt territory of like, why aren't you having sex with me? Why aren't you attracted to me? Why don't you love me? Why don't you show me affection? Why don't you give me head? Like, this is stupid. Like, do you really love this person, or are you just using them for their flesh, for lack of a better word? There's probably a better word. I just couldn't think of it in the moment. That's actually pretty gross when you think about it. But, you know, anyone being forceful from one person to another is just not, it's not good. It's not helpful. It's not addressing the problem. It's not addressing the problem of someone, your partner, being depressed, and you're finding ways to make it about you. And it's not what they're trying to do. They're not being depressed on purpose. They're not being depressed to try to make you feel bad. You're not being depressed so that they can find a reason to express why they don't like you. That's horseshit. Like, stop making it about you. That's not... No, partnerships are about each other. You know, it's about taking care of yourself, but it's not about your insecurities. It's not about someone else making you feel good if you're not in a place to accept it. I hope that makes sense. What else can I talk about with this? You know, frankly, how to get out of it is really just, it kind of depends on what type of depression you're dealing with. For me, I deal with depression and mania. And sometimes when I'm in mania, my sex drive turns up, actually. And to a point where it feels too aggressive. You know, it's a little bit scary to me, you know. To the one receiving it, sometimes it's what they want. But sometimes for me, it's a little bit like too primal or a little bit too aggressive if you're dealing with mania. Because it's not just... The problem with mania is that it's baked in the idea of satiating the desire to fulfill your, you know, need for endorphin rushes. And it's not necessarily about the connection with the person that you're with. It's not about having sex with them. It's about getting off. It's about, you know, that's why people in mania are susceptible to alcohol abuse, to drug use, things like that. Because it is just about just getting it. And while in a relationship, if you're just like in that moment together and you can kind of feel it and you're just like doing the dirty, as some people would say, or as I like to say at least, if you're really just literally just doing the dirty and you're having a good time and it's about that, then have at it. Have fun. You know, be aggressive. Enjoy. But the truth is, like, if you're in a long relationship and you're trying to connect with that person, it's not always going to be like that. And it's got to be a little bit more about the fact that you're having sex with them and not that you're just having sex. That's really the difference between respecting someone and just, you know, just putting your stuff inside them. Like, that's the difference. You know, it's about support and respect for each other, regardless of the scenario. I mean, that's kind of the common theme of this podcast, right? It's about respecting each other, respecting respecting the desires of the other person, or the lack thereof of the other person. You know, just because you're extremely horny and the other person is not and dealing with depression, you know, it's not their fault. They're not trying to not want to do this. They're not trying to want to not feel anything. You know, depression is frustrating in that sense. You know, you want to feel something. You know, and sometimes you push yourself to have sex so that you can feel like the extreme feeling, you know, that intense orgasm, so you could be like, oh, maybe this will jumpstart me. And, you know, it's just not always the case. You know, sometimes you just gotta back off or ask someone to back off. And it's even trickier when you're single. You know, I haven't been single for a long time, but I imagine when you're depressed and your logical brain starts to go to a place where you're like, maybe an orgasm will fix me, you know, with another person, not just by yourself in a bathroom with a piece of toilet paper. It's, you know, you start to make, especially in mania, you're more likely to make decisions that are not necessarily beneficial for your future. You know, you're going to go out to a club and try to nail someone, and you could get diseases. You know, you have to still be careful. So especially when you're in a depressive state and you're feeling sex positive, and you want to make some stuff happen, you still got to take the precautions. You got to have the conversation with the person. You got to say, like, you good? When's the last time you tested? Wear a condom. Be protected. Things like that. Don't just ask her if she's on birth control. Like, get a condom. Don't be stupid. And sometimes depression or mania can make you forego those things. All you want is the feeling. All you want is the endorphin rush. And, you just gotta work extra hard to make sure that you're not making one moment of your life ruin the rest of it. That's all. So I managed to push through this. I didn't really have a plan going into it. I just knew that I wanted to talk about, my situation, and I'm curious if anyone's had any difficulties, if you're willing to talk about it, if you have any questions as it pertains to depression and sex. This kind of conversation came to light as I was somebody made a comment. They were asking about whether medication had effects, and sometimes that does. And medication is about stabilizing you and not necessarily giving you that high. And sometimes feeling kind of numb or nothing is it's not necessarily going to produce a horny feeling. And feeling like you want to sleep with someone is important in terms of a relationship. You don't want to just feel like you're pushing through it, because that doesn't feel good. It really, really doesn't. There's the misconception that yes, sex should always feel great. So why shouldn't you just push through and have sex and feel better? But it almost feels worse to have sex with someone and then you roll over and you're like, nothing. And then, their reaction afterwards, they see that you don't connect with them or that you didn't enjoy it, and it makes them upset. And, they start to feel insecure. And again, point is support, conversations, talk to each other about it. Let someone know, I'm feeling depressed today, or I've been feeling depressed for weeks. I'm sorry, I just don't have it. Or, give them a little bit more, give them more in terms of how they can help you emotionally. I'm feeling depressed and I'm not connecting in that way, but maybe we can just cuddle, or we can talk, or we can, go get some ice cream, or I don't know, something to help connect with that person beyond just sexual. And then you can kind of build that support system, and you could slowly start to get to that point, because it's just the hard part, especially with relationships, with longer relationships, is sex becomes an expectation, and that's weird. It's the hard part is all right, roll over, we're gonna take it now. It's that's not cute. It's not good for romantically or not. So I think we have a comment. Let's see. Oh, my friend. Depression in itself is what squishes the drive. Getting to that horny feeling is the hardest part. Right. It's hard to... I think the hardest part is for the partner. Is for the partner to see what is really going on. And again, the communication's part of it. Providing that support for each other. And sometimes being supportive is pretty sexy. Or getting that support, is really nice. You start to just work on the base level feelings of just enjoying being around the person, and not trying to go from 0 to 100 and just skip to the sex part. Not just crawl into bed at night and expect things to happen, but kind of some emotional foreplay, as it were. Sometimes physical exercise over the long term can kind of help with things too. It is a lot of physical blood flow stuff too. So for dudes, if you're not getting it up, ladies, no sauce down there. That's gross. I shouldn't have said sauce. That's a bad word. No, that's bad. That's gross. I'm trying to have too much fun. Point being, if things are not jiving in that downstairs realm, there could be some physiological things. You might have to go see a doctor. You might have to talk to someone. Exercise, eat a little bit better. Sometimes you can be a little bit too unhealthy physically, and that could just like, you could have some mental insecurities about your body as well that is affecting things, and that's also some aspects to consider. I'm no expert in terms of sex and depression. I do my best in both areas, but I'm no expert. I've only dealt with situations of feeling like there's pressure, dealing with depression and not wanting to do it, like that sucks. But it's the reality. And again, support. I keep pushing this, but it's about support. If you're a partner of someone who's depressed, giving them continuous support and love, and thinking about things beyond sex, not just trying to go from 0 to 100 and put it in and roll over and be done and go to sleep and then just like ignore the depression. Repressing the depression is worse than facing it and dealing with it. So with that, we got a good solid 20 minutes out of it. So let me know if you have any additional questions or comments about sex and depression, anything you'd like to know about it. I'm happy to do some research or share some more of my story and really just provide support. If you're having difficulties, I do suggest talking to your partner, or if you're dealing with any kind of physiological issues, to talk to your doctor and find ways to deal with that. And if you're dealing with, if you're taking medication and it's affecting you, I'd be curious about that too, because I haven't personally taken any medication or dealt with that, but sometimes, sometimes that causes some difficulty for people. So with that, I appreciate you guys, and that's it. I'll catch you next time. Bye.